WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We're keeping calm. We're staying local. We're trying to find some good stories here amidst this pandemic, and there's certainly enough bad news everywhere, and lots of folks here kind of coming together to create something on the other end of this that is more pleasant and better for us. Got an election coming up. We've been talking about all sorts of things around here, and several of my friends said, you need to get to know the people at the Baltimore Community Foundation because they're doing good work before, during, and after the pandemic. Shanaysha Sauls is the president and CEO. I have not had the pleasure of having her on the program. I've had several friends say you need to get her on to find out what's going on. So here we are, and I can't even get a coffee with you or an iced tea or come over and give you an elbow bump or even find a Skype. But I am glad we're together here, and I'm sending everybody out to bcf.org to learn more about sort of these fundamental institutions of Baltimore and what we're all going through in the middle of this and trying to hold it all together. Good day to you. I'm sorry that we're not meeting under better conditions, but it is great to have you on the program today. Welcome in.
Oh, thank you. You have great friends. I need to put them on my payroll.
Well, I mean, I don't even know about that. I mean, the best kinds are the volunteers, right? That's where the heavy lifting gets done. And for the Baltimore Community Foundation, give me an overview. If I'm at a networking event and you're stuck next to me at a table and we have to give the 60-second elevator speech on what the Baltimore Community Foundation is and does, give me that part of it to start the day.
Great. So we are a foundation that serves donors of all shapes and sizes. So we serve the big-time donor, we serve the mid-sized donor, and we serve just regular people who want to be philanthropic and want to give back and need a place to park their money while they make good decisions about the best charities and organizations to give them to. And so we are open for everyone. We are not yet 50 years old, so I'd like to say that we're young and scrappy, which means that allows us to be a foundation and serve our donors, but we can be a little bit more than that. We can be responsive to the needs of the community. The Baltimore Community Foundation serves the Baltimore region, but specifically Baltimore City and Baltimore County. And because of the diversity of donors and the diversity of our communities, we actually have kind of a unique perch in understanding the needs of Baltimore. And so we are also advocates for issues that will move the needle of the quality of life. That's why I'm delighted to be on this show, because we need to tell all the good things about Baltimore because we have many more assets to leverage than the bad stories would suggest. And so we're just here to serve the community. We're here to serve donors. We're here to tie them to Baltimore, tie them to one another, and with the sole purpose of just moving the needle and making Baltimore a better place for generations to generations.
Well, pandemic aside, and murder rate, and elections, and elected officials being, okay, great, wire, you can give me all that. Then we could talk about, okay, how building this place back up. Let's talk about assets here. Let's talk about the port. Let's talk about being on 95. Let's talk about proximity. Let's talk about airports. Let's talk about quality of life where there's oceans and mountains and sunshine and there's so many things to recommend here, which is why I've lived here all of my life, and I'm an advocate for Baltimore. But the Community Foundation, getting it started, where's the seed of we're going to have a community foundation? Whose idea, and where's the genesis of it?
Oh, that's a great question. So it actually started as the brainchild of our banking magnates of the 70s. So we remember when Baltimore was an epicenter of the finance industry, and many banks had their corporate headquarters here in Baltimore. So the mercantiles of the world, they got together and they decided that it was time for Baltimore to have a community foundation. This thing called a community foundation is actually quite old. So while I describe BCF as being young and scrappy, community foundations are over 100 years old. And so Baltimore was a little late to the game. But, our banking leaders said that it's time for us to have an organization like this where people can send their charitable giving and that there's an ability to have a board of directors that represents broadly the diversity of Baltimore. There's no single cause beyond Baltimore that we are led by. So it's not based on race. It's not religion. It's not sort of a single issue area. The only thing that we care about is Greater Baltimore. And so it was really the banking leaders of Baltimore that decided that BCF needed a community foundation. And our conference room because we've got this great new space that we moved into about 3 weeks before the
Where are
pandemic.
you? Tell me where you are, because I can't visit you now, but I want to visit you later, right?
We are right across from Penn Station on Mount Royal. So we are directly facing Penn Station. So we've got a great view of the statue.
I know that area well, not just from taking trains. I'm a UB grad, so I've walked up and down, and obviously the Modell Lyric and the Meyerhoff been a part of my life forever. We're featuring them this week on Baltimore Positive with Don Moeller as well, who will be joining us a little later on as well. Shanaysha Sauls is joining us here from the BCF. You can find them at bcf.org. They are the Baltimore Community Foundation, founded in 1972 and governed by a 25-member board of trustees. It says here, and I got 18 numbers, so distributed $18 million in 2018. Update me on 19 and where all of this was before the earth shook a month ago, right?
Right. So we are actually finalizing our audit, and strangely enough, we've had to push back the review of our financials for official numbers because there's this thing called the COVID-19 that's keeping everyone in their house doing homework. So we don't have official numbers, but I would say that our giving last year was about the same as in 2019 was about the same as in 2018. So we'll say about $20 million. What we find is that the vast majority of our giving goes to Baltimore. So our donors, through their individual accounts, we call them funds, or through BCF's own discretionary grant making, 75% of all of our grants, that $20 million, goes to Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Another 10% goes to the rest of the state. And we have a lot of donors that care about the environment, so a lot of that 10% goes to causes and organizations that support the Chesapeake Bay and the environment. And the remaining, 10 to 12% goes to other causes around the country.
That's fascinating. You said the 10% because we had Martin O'Malley on a couple months ago. I would encourage anyone to go out and check out those Baltimore Positive episodes. And he's got his new book, and the Bay was always his cause. And it's a fascinating thing because, it's not something that's fixed right away. We all want this pandemic to be fixed right away, and it's not going to be fixed right away. But the investment you make that 10, 20 years later, you start to see more fish, more, and the measurement of that. And when I see foundation work, and the more I learn about foundation work, that so many things are in the here and now, and you have to, but looking over the hill is where some of that money can go. And I love the environmental part of that. And I think that we talk about this pandemic and we talk about global warming and what's around the corner is something you can't see, that once it gets up on you, it can be bigger than you think it is. For you guys with the foundation and what this last month has represented and what it's done, I would think people are working remotely. There's a lot of relationship. You don't raise $30 million in a year without having a lot of tentacles into other places. What are you feeling bubbling up from all this with unemployment and kids out of school and all of the disruption part of this for what you are looking at 6 months, 3 months down the line, end of summer, when we get back to whatever normal is, as to what the foundation could do this year that maybe wasn't available last year, there wasn't a need. There are going to be more needs than there have ever been. I think we can all agree on that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a disruptive and unsettling time. That is probably even an understatement. And yet, to your point, we are finding ways to rediscover our sense of community and to remain connected. And actually, I'm actually struck by whether it is among my colleagues or our peers or just our neighbors and how much genuine empathy and kindness there is for one another. And at the same time, we're still finding ways to have fun. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone's doing their virtual happy hours. People start drinking before 5 because they never did that before a pandemic. So we're finding ways to still be humane and to address this really, really serious crisis. So BCF, we're actually really lucky. Our systems are set up so that we can run it at about 80% strength remotely. So we are able to communicate. Everyone has workstations at home. We're able to transact electronically because we are in part a philanthropic bank. So we're able to do a lot of our work electronically and leverage our connections through email and phone in order to serve the community and to raise money. So one of the first things that we did was we opened a COVID-19 Evolving Community Needs Fund. And that fund is set up precisely in the way that you set up the architecture. First, it's going to focus on immediate needs, right? And those are going to be the most vulnerable populations that need good information, need services, and need resources. And we are able to use our resources in the community in order to make sure that those communities can be attended to. So we're talking specifically in our case the elderly, the homeless, and immigrants who speak Spanish, who sort of have to interact with the healthcare system very differently, and we want to make sure they get good information from trusted sources. We're also saving some powder and that fund for midterm concerns. And we don't know, frankly, when the midterm is going to be, and we don't know what the midterm is going to be. What we are fairly certain of is that there are going to be sectors and organizations that are going to be shadows of their former selves once we come out of this, because we are going to come out of it. And so we're leaving some dry powder to think about what does the nonprofit sector look like, those organizations that would have otherwise been healthy, would have had great balance sheets, organizations that would have had people attending their shows. What do we do for them once we sort of start to climb out of this? And then there's the whole long term, right? Getting people back on their feet again, getting our businesses back on their feet again, having our businesses learn how to adapt to this new reality, because we are going to create a new normal. And so we want to do as much as we can to provide resources and connections so that we can scaffold up to the mid and long term. So far, the outpouring has been tremendous. We receive on an hourly basis donations from every walk of life. I mean, last week we reported that we're almost at $1.5 million in donations just for this fund, and we have people giving $25, giving $100, giving $100,000, because everyone wants to do something, and they come to BCF because they trust our knowledge, they trust our experience, and they know that we're credible and we're people of integrity, and we're connecting to the people on the ground who are doing the frontline work. So that is the arc of the work that we're doing. We're really trying to sort of look at those immediate concerns where, number one, there is a gap that's not filled by a systemic solution, right? We have to let government and large systems do their job. So, any money that we add has to really, truly identify and address the gap. We need to know that we're adding value. And for this money that we're deploying right now, we want to see some immediate impact. So we've given money to support the telemedicine for Spanish speakers to keep them out of the emergency rooms unnecessarily. We provided money to the homeless shelters so they can do screening of the homeless population. By experts' projections, one homeless person gets COVID-19, it will be in the shelters within 72 hours. And then we're doing small.
And that's going on today. Literally today, the homeless man that's literally lived on my corner for 17 years, that man can get tested today. Okay, that's good to know, because we have been concerned about that.
Well, he can get screened, so I don't want to overstate it.
Okay.
So he can get screened. So there are a series of questions.
Well, there's been some overstatings every night around 5 or 6, if you haven't noticed. So, and I've been watching that, and and you chuckle, and we almost have to chuckle, but it's not chuckleable. Because it's dangerous. And you said something, by the way, I want to reset. Dr. Shanaysha Sauls joining us here from BCF, the Baltimore Community Foundation. You said good info from trusted sources, right? And Dr. Sauls, I know your background's in teaching, right? And teaching young people. And, we've had Dr. Shanaysha on, we've had Dr. Williams on. I mean, Don Moeller, my partner, was a superintendent and a high school principal. He was my high school guidance counselor in 1982, which is how all this mess began. But good information and trusted sources. And, I come from a Hispanic background. My family's Venezuelan. It's why I'm here. My parents were, English was very second language from my father's side of the family. And who to trust and where to go when what we're seeing on the evening news is laughable, right? Not the evening news. The wrong information is coming out from the top in red hats, and then trying to figure out what a child would make of all of this, right? Which is what we've been talking about. And the good info and trusted sources, that's such an important part of fixing our city and healing our city is... going back to Freddie Gray and trust of police and trust of leadership and trust of government and all of that. But good information and trusted, that's what's going to get us out of this and keep us safe. And the masks this week and all of that an organization like yours that is trusted, that it's so important that the right information is reaching people right here, right now, especially with this disease floating around our town as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think among the values that any organization brings to this conversation has to be trust and simplicity. I'll talk about simplicity first. People are tying themselves up into knots, and there's a great deal of uncertainty about not only today, but also tomorrow and the future. There are now people who are new participants, and food insecurity, shelter insecurity, resource insecurity. And so it has to, like, our processes and our information has to be simple and easily accessible. And then trust. I mean, facts are funny things, but saying what you know, saying what you don't know, and making clear delineations between those two things actually help to build trust, and people know that the information that they're receiving is worthy. So I absolutely agree. And I do think national leadership, federal leadership aside, I will say that our state and local leadership have worked very well together. I think
we've all seen that at 11 o'clock every day too, right? Literally.
That's right. And I think that, I think, knock on wood, when the dust settled, I think we're going to find that Maryland is probably ahead of the curve in a lot of ways from other places because of the coordination of that leadership. I've been just incredibly impressed by that. But I will say that I cringe. Yeah, it's cringeworthy, but I'll leave it there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we we're talking life and death, and lives are in the balance here. Shanaysha Sauls, she's the good doctor and president and CEO of all things PCF and the Baltimore Community Foundation, came to my desk, said, you need to have her on. They're doing good things. Let her tell her story. I'm like, well, that's what we're here for. I mean, the heck else am I going to do in a pandemic except tell good stories about ways we're helping people? If this thing curves a little differently in the next 10, 14 days, and we go on a more New York path here, what then becomes the role of you, your money, your foundation in various ways? You said something really interesting, kind of lost in all of the words you had in the last segment. I wanted to almost stop you in the middle and say, first time, like someone is displaced and going into a shelter, first time they've ever not had a meal that they've created for themselves. My father was born in 1929, stood in soup lines during Herbert Hoover, and we're hearing things, scary things like that at this point. Many people I've seen on television filling out unemployment forms for the first time in their life, and they're my age. And if I had to fill out an unemployment form, it would be the first time in my life I'd have to fill one out. I'm dealing with banks right now as a small business owner as I am. I mean, everyone is doing something really weird and left-handed right now. I can only imagine the most vulnerable people who have made their bills, have paid their bills, have managed to stay in their home, wherever their home is, in a very disruptive part of Baltimore, that maybe this is the month they finally can't pay their bill. I think we all understand that right now, and having people they can turn to, a government, a bank, or someone down the street, a neighbor, when they're out of all of that, maybe you're that place they turn to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think dignity. Whether someone is a new entrant to this kind of vulnerability or not. I mean, I think really treating people with dignity. And I think that if anything comes out of this, and I think a lot of good lessons will come out of this, is that the face of what it means to be insecure is going to change. It's going to become much more human and diverse, and I think that means people will respond a little bit differently to it. So I do think just making sure that any processes, any opportunities to help, understand that we're treating the end user with dignity is going to be really, really important. In terms of sort of the climbing out, right, and you're talking about the mid and the long term, we are thinking about ways to support the organizations and the small businesses that will ultimately get back on their feet and start reemploying and supporting and providing the resources so that people can take care of themselves. Those conversations are very, very nascent, and we want to make sure that we can be as helpful as possible, but they're absolutely on the radar. We use some of our resources to support small business development in Baltimore, and we've got our list of small businesses that we're keeping an eye on, and we're supporting the banking institutions and the finance institutions that support them to make sure that they have some assurance that we will come out on the other side. You still have friends, and there's still going to be a long-term strategy. But this is going to be a mammoth issue that will take a BCF and many, many others, the systems working together in alignment in order to address it, to get everyone back on their feet again. Because I think we will come out of it. We will be different, but there's so many unknowns. But I think we're all just clamoring to get to that other side.
Well, and stay safe for now, right? And back to the original thing you said, good information from trusted sources. That's what 600,000 residents of Baltimore need, literally, right?
Right.
We are chatting with Dr. Shanaysha Sauls. She is the president and CEO of the BCF. That's the Baltimore Community Foundation. I am so glad I got to spend a portion of the day with you amidst this pandemic, and we can we're trying to find some encouragement of all of the pieces of this and how it's all going to work while we've all had this little bit of a timeout right now. For everyone that wants to help you, how can they be helpful from their computer, their laptop, in front of on their couch right now, sitting back? Maybe they see this or find this out on LinkedIn or find us on Facebook or wherever and say, hey, Baltimore Community Foundation, I've heard about them. Now I know more. What can be done right now other than just stroking a check?
That's right. So the first thing is please stay home unless you have to leave.
And wash your hands.
There are people, and wash your hands and take precautions and practice social distancing. I mean, we all need everyone to observe those principles and guidelines so that we can get out of this as soon as possible. So that is actually helpful. I would say that obviously, we can always use support to help neighbors and to help communities and nonprofits become sustainable and to pivot their operations in order to face COVID. So if you're able to give anything, small or large, go to bcf.org and please contribute to the Evolving Community Funds site. And we will be great stewards of that, of your resources, and there's going to be ongoing updates for how we're spending that money and what we're seeing on the ground. But thirdly, just, connect a little bit more. Last a little bit longer. Check on your neighbor. Call. Check on your loved ones. Check on your friends. I think we're going to have to redefine the sense of connectedness, and I think what we learned about being connected is going to carry us through whatever comes before us. And that's what I would say would be the most helpful.
Who's the first person you're going to hug, like when you can actually physically touch someone that you haven't been allowed to touch?
Oh, my gosh, that is a good question.
I've been asking everybody that because, we all have that thing going on right now, right?
So my husband and I have very good friends, besties. Like we vacation together, we spend many weekends together, and all we're doing now is talking, and I cannot wait to be able to go over her house and just give her and her husband and her 2 daughters and her dog a big hug.
And eat pizza or do something stupid that you just like to do, right? Literally.
Yes.
Maybe sometime soon.
I hope so.
We're all getting a little cabin fever, I think, here. Dr. Shanaysha Sauls joining us here. She's the president and CEO of the Baltimore Community Foundation. Keep up the great work. We'll send everybody out to bcf.org. And I hope there comes a point where we can have you at the State Fair or join us down for a crab cake at Fadley's, and we'll tell the whole story of the BCF. And I'll drag Don Moeller down, and we'll talk about how we all got through this together, all right?
All right, sounds good. Please take good care.
Appreciate you. Wash your hands. I'm telling everybody to do that, all right?
Okay.
There you go. Dr. Shanaysha Sauls joining us here from the Baltimore Community Foundation. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Snapchat. I'm sharing videos and good stories and business owners and just a little bit of sports, a little bit of NFL in here, but mainly trying to keep calm, stay local, and stay Baltimore positive.